Hi, my name is Kamari Ross.
And TJ, or Termaine, but TJ most of the time. We're going to be talking about editing today. Your mic does not seem as loud as mine for some reason.
Yes, I have to speak a little bit closer.
So we are joining you on this lovely weekend.
I'm excited for next weekend.
What's happening next weekend?
The acting course.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be awesome. Don't let my forgetfulness of the fact that it's happening and that I'm teaching it discourage anyone from coming. Yeah, acting class is resuming next weekend, next Saturday, downtown Tampa, John Germany Public Library in the auditorium from 3 p.m. till 5:30 p.m. Be on time. Find free parking if you can. Free parking on the weekend downtown.
We're going to talk about editing film. So I looked up some topics, and again, I don't have a lot of experience in editing videos, but
of course,
I do understand the importance of cutting the video at the right time, and also the amount of footage that an editor usually gets before the amount of footage they get compared to what the movie is extremely different. I was actually reading an article with Steven Spielberg. He had a 96:1 ratio of film editing had to do for a movie. I have to look at, I think it was The Power. It was a movie, basically 96 minutes for every minute was the ratio he had to edit.
Sounds about right. It's kind of high. It's higher than I thought, but it's like different directors probably have different ratios.
Right.
But 96:1 is pretty impressive. That sounds
a lot.
Sounds a bit excessive to me. I mean, it seems like I would have a lot of experience with that as far as because I'm used to multicam shooting, and so at least 3 cameras running at the same time. But and then I also am somebody, when I'm shooting as a cinematographer, I like to let the camera run. So I'll have it running even before the scene starts, and you'll get some of the actors just kind of doing their thing, and it turns out some of that stuff can be usable. So that's kind of why I let it run.
Really?
You can get. Because when the actors are in character or getting into character, or even if they're not in character, they're there in the setting, in the frame, in the scene that they're going to be in, and maybe they're just looking at their lines or whatever. But you can use a few seconds of them looking down at something as, I don't know, like a bridge between shots, or you can, some things that you don't intend to use can be usable. That's why I do it. I'll let the camera run before and after, and I don't tell the actors that it's going.
So you can get their natural, get them in their natural state.
Yeah, sometimes you get it by accident, But I find that it's a good practice. So I have a lot more footage than I would use, but it's definitely, I don't think it's approaching anywhere near 96:1 is a ratio. I mean, because when you think about it, that sounds very, very inefficient.
It can be. Call it back.
You know what I mean? And that's surprising, given the amount of... Which director was that?
I think it was Steven Spielberg. Actually, I'm pulling out the website now. It's looking kind of choppy. Hold on a second.
But, even if it's Steven Spielberg, that's a lot more than I would have expected, especially given that Hollywood budgets, they're pretty conservative with their money. They have a lot of money to throw around, but they don't want you wasting it, as far as I understand. But if it's Steven Spielberg, then I guess, whatever money you give him, you're going to get it back and more. But that is, I don't know how you could do that, unless, but then I know that a lot of times movies have deleted scenes and stuff like that. So that could account for a lot of that. It also could account for messed up shooting days, or actors, canceling shoots, so you can't use some of the footage, or if the studio decides they want to go in a different direction because something isn't working. So after all that, I can sort of get to 63:1, but I don't know how you get to 96 and 1.
I've heard that's the average is for every minute of film is an hour of filming that could be done for.
Oh, well, that's different.
Oh.
But so is it saying there's 96 minutes of unused footage for every minute that's used, or is it saying 96 minutes of shooting for each minute that makes it to the screen?
Hold on, let me find out. The website's not working on my.
Because that makes sense. Take your time. And I've heard stats for listeners similar to this when it comes to lighting. Like, I've heard people talk about how many hours it takes to light a scene, and then, how much of that scene actually makes it to the screen. There's a lot of time that gets invested in lighting, which is why I don't like to do lighting. It just takes a lot of time. I'm not against lighting. You need lighting no matter what you do, whether it's studio lighting or if it's natural lighting. But that studio lighting takes time. You're working with a lot of equipment. You got to get it right. It's got to be consistent. You got a lot of people working around the equipment too. So I like to just use natural lighting any time possible. It's kind of a rule of mine at this point.
Natural lighting is best, even in photography. When I was doing a corporate event last week, it was so much easier to take the shots when the sun was up rather than trying to figure out where the flash.
So you can bring that closer. For some reason, It's just as long as it's comfortably.
Yeah, you good. Let's see. How does that sound?
Well, I think it sounds better.
Oh, awesome.
But But as far as editing, I don't think the number is that high as far as unused footage to used footage.
So the footage, it wasn't Steven Spielberg, it was Walter Murch, and he was editing the movie called Apocalypse Now. The run of the movie was 153 minutes. So this means the total footage was about 14,535 minutes and 242 hours long.
So that's how much footage was shot for that movie?
242 hours.
Okay, so that's how much footage was shot for that movie versus used. Okay, but isn't that a special case? Because am I not mistaken that this was a movie where a lot of shit went wrong, and they ended up making a movie about how wrong this movie went?
It might have. I have to look that up.
It's definitely the case with a film called Lost in La Mancha, where a director was trying to do Don Quixote, right? And it was like it's like a famous cursed instance of filmmaking where everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. Yes. And it was such a failure. Like they had to try and, salvage something. I believe that the movie Lost in La Mancha, he's the writer of Don Quixote, is the movie that they made about the movie failing to be made. And I would believe in that instance or something like that so much footage can be shot versus used. Because on an indie level, I can't see any way how that is possible. Like, it's just not. The only way it's possible is with like documentary type situations.
I can see that.
Because you got the cameras rolling for a long time. You don't really know what's going to happen, so you're filming everything. You don't know how much is usable, so you're filming everything. So I can understand movies like that. And you said Apocalypse Now?
Yeah, Apocalypse Now is the movie.
I think it's linked to another one called Hearts of Darkness, which might be the same situation where there's the movie and then there's the documentary about the making of the movie. And I think I heard that Hearts of Darkness was better than the movie that it was about.
Oh, wow.
But we should probably check that out so we can look like experts. But everyone, you get the point. We're going to check on these numbers a little bit, but I'm just going to go ahead and say up front, I don't think that the Hollywood standard is 96 minutes of film to every 1 minute of actual used, edited footage that makes it to the screen. I think it's probably 96 minutes of shooting for each minute of film. How much is that? How much time is that?
Say again?
How much time is 96 minutes for each minute? So like 120 minutes.
You take 60 divided by 90, it's about it's at least, well, it's like an hour and 30 minutes, 36 minutes.
I think we just times 96 times 120 because the average movie is about 2 hours. Where's my calculator? I use the calculator so little, I don't know where to find it when I actually need it. Does that mean I'm smart or dumb?
That means you know how to use the calculator in your brain.
I like that. Okay, 96 times 120. So they're saying if the ratio in Hollywood is 96 minutes of footage shot for every minute on the screen, and every average movie is about 120 minutes, so that's 120 times 96. That would give you 11,520 minutes divided by 60, right? Is what you were saying? 60 minutes. Or actually, this is going to give us the number of hours by dividing it by 60. So it's 192 hours, 24 hours in a day. Oh, wait. Well, in Hollywood, these days can be pretty long. Let's say it's going to be a 12-hour day. We'll be conservative. 192 divided by 12. 16 days of shooting. That makes sense. That makes sense.
Okay.
That does make sense. But it doesn't. Yes, no. It does make sense if 96 to 1 is the amount of time shooting.
Okay.
Right? Because the editing, if that's unused footage, that doesn't make any sense at all.
That's unused footage, to my understanding.
Huh?
I think it was unused footage, to my understanding, because we're talking about editing.
Yeah, we are. So you didn't find that article that you originally...
I can't find the 96 to 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say that that's probably wrong. I think that what they meant, or what they said, you might have read it fast, but they were saying it'd take 96 minutes of shooting for each minute that makes it to the screen, which would make sense. 16 days for 12 hours, that sounds about right for me. Now on an indie level, yeah, the 96.1 footage unused to use doesn't make any sense. Never. As far as shooting, 96 to 1 for each 1 minute. Not sure about that.
Well, I think, because it depends, because, there's a 48-hour film project.
You know what, I'm going to say it's probably pretty consistent. If we're talking about indie feature film to a Hollywood feature film, the process that people go through on a local level is very similar to what they do in Hollywood. Even the length of time, the length of the shoots, 10, 12-hour days. Some people have done 16-hour days locally. I feel like that's a little bit abusive, but it happens. So I'm pretty sure probably it's somewhere around the same ratio. It's not what I'm used to, not anywhere near. I'm used to about 4 hours.
Wow.
Of per shoot.
It's a lot. It's a huge difference.
I like to say that's efficient. I like to say that's planning. That's knowing what you're doing. And that's things like focusing on natural lighting, natural settings, and not spending too much time on a lot of things that people spend time on.
Well, then let's get into editing then.
Let's talk about editing.
Yeah. My extent of the editing has mostly been done through my phone and a couple of videos done through my camera. The first actually ever video I think I truly took seriously in editing was a video I did of Gasparilla. This year, the Gasparilla. This year, January 2018, Gasparilla Parade. It was, and I took a lot of shots throughout the day, and I realized all the shots together was over an hour of footage, and I had to challenge myself to get it down to 5 minutes because some of that stuff wasn't important, and it was hard because it's like photos for me it's easy, it looks crap, you delete it, but for editing videos it's like you have to separate your emotions to what you know is good footage. So I'll give you an example. I did a scene where there's a helicopter flying over by, but it was in a stationary position. Mm-hmm. So what I did is I changed the shutter speed on the DSLR to make it look like the propellers were actually moving slow. I just increased it so that way the camera can capture it. Right. And I did that for I think about a couple 30 seconds, maybe 30 seconds to a minute. But the thing was I had to decide, because I was I'm moving around trying to stay still as possible. I have to decide out of those 30 seconds what I'm actually going to use. I can't use the full thing.
Right. So you're saying that on the camera itself, you took up the shutter speed. Mm-hmm. You made that a higher ratio. So normally you have that like 1/48th of a second shutter speed, and so you jack that way, way, way up, so that when you slow it down, it's going to be less. You're going to have less blur and more.
Yeah, more focus. Yeah. In the video, it made you can actually see the propeller. So, and I did different. Basically, throughout those couple of seconds, I did different shutter speeds, see which one I like. So I had to go through which one I want to choose, because you can only choose that scene once, and that was the challenge, to choose that scene once and try to get the story all together. Mm-hmm. I never learned anything about editing, but I wanted to try it out. I actually did it using an old program called Windows Movie Maker. Okay. On PC.
Windows people are familiar with that, especially if you were a beginner. It's a Windows version of iMovie.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, it's not a Windows version of iMovie. It's just Windows version of an editing program.
Yeah.
iMovie's better.
I wish they would have kept up with it. They could have made something a little bit greater.
Yeah, they didn't. I wonder why. Maybe it's harder to develop editing programs than we think it is.
But lately, I've been trying to see if I can tell a story through the scenes and the music rather than trying to use explanation in it. The only wording I put is in the beginning and at the end, and the wording is just titling the video. I try to see if I can create a story just by using different scenes itself. Okay. Kind of getting practice for that. There's a series I'm doing. I didn't even plan on this, of everything I try to plan. Basically, every time it rains at my job, I was stuck. I take pictures of cars. I couldn't do anything. So what I do is I just take slow motion videos of the rain and try to see if I can get a feel of how rain is peaceful to me.
Okay. I thought you were going to say something like, see if I can see a raindrop. See if I can get some wetness coming through on the screen, slowing this thing down.
Sure, whatever helps the person. But I think the series I'm going to focus on is maybe focus more on ambient photos and ambient videos, stuff that's calming, because my mind is always on the go.
1 second. So I see what you're saying. So, beginner, intermediate, or expert? Where would you say?
Oh, beginner.
Beginner. Okay. I would say I'm intermediate. My experience has been, I've been editing pretty much since I've had a camera. And actually, my earliest editing experience was back in high school when I bought a V8 videotape camera, standard definition, and I did what's called linear editing. And that's basically, I edited on the camera. And
so that's what it means.
Well, you do it the hard way. So what I did was I filmed a scene of myself playing some role, okay, and then I'd play it back.
What role is that?
And I was basically doing my version of the real world.
Oh.
At my house.
You skipped over that. So I was like, I want to dig deeper into that.
So I played 9 characters. I basically
you played 9. You played 9. Wow.
So this is gonna explain how I had to edit it. So I would film myself as one character. The next scene, I stopped the camera. I stopped the tape right where the next shot is going to be. I set up the camera, change my clothes, film myself as a different character, play back the 2 scenes, see how I like it. Go with a third scene, different character, new scene. So it's basically the introduction of each character. then I start to go into how the characters interact with each other. So cutting back and forth. I might just let the camera run for 2 minutes and I'm just talking crap, like the confessionals or whatever. And then I'll replay that on the camera to see how it goes. And I was like, I should cut into somebody else saying something funny right here. And I would film myself saying something funny right there. I know, well, this shot should be about 5 seconds because I want it to come back to the part where he's talking there. And so the editing that took place was very manual and very, film to the part of the tape that you want the new shot to be on.
That sounds fun.
It's not fun, but at the time, it was, that's just how you did it. I didn't know a better way of doing it.
Well, think about the planning involved in that. You can't just shoot a bunch of shots and hope to put something together. You have to actually think about, okay, if I want to put this all together in order, you have to think about what kind of characters am I playing, what are the scenes. It kind of forced you to create a plan.
No. I was making it up as I went, but the thing is, I didn't know that there was another way to do it.
Okay, gotcha.
I didn't have a computer. I had a computer, but it was not anywhere near an editing type of computer. I've never seen editing software before. The closest thing that I had been to an editing program was at school. We had a TV production program or class, and they had an editor. And it was like this big machine, big ball mouse or whatever, and it actually did editing in a very linear way as well. But basically I didn't know, hey, when it comes to nowadays, we have what's called non-linear editing programs where you don't have to film in the order that you're going to put your clips. You can shoot one day of footage, shoot another day of footage, shoot another day of footage, and put it in whatever order you want. It's non-linear. And so that's where I started. And then when I bought myself a laptop and I started editing, I went through a very slow progression of, man, this sucks. All the video's choppy or whatever. So then it's like you need a fast computer. You need a better camera. So it's just been kind of over the years been building up better and better equipment. And now I could easily make a short film on a laptop with a camera that I have. And so I've edited various short skits and video projects and short films. Have never done a feature. And I think that would be a nightmare editing-wise. But, so I would say I'm in the intermediate level where I can do anything inside my specific editing program, which I use Adobe Premiere. I've used Final Cut as well, but I can pretty much cut a movie together, do some coloring, do some sound work, do titles, some limited animations. I can pretty much do everything that's done absent special effects, absent After Effects, other various advanced editing techniques and things like that. So I'm a pretty decent all-around editor, even when you compare me to professional commercial editors or whatever. Like if Steven Spielberg gave me his footage, shot on IMAX or like a $300,000 camera or whatever, I could edit it. Like I'm pretty sure I could cut the footage together.
That sounds like a challenge.
Yeah, so it's once you understand the principles of editing, like the whole process, then it becomes pretty much the same thing that it's been for every editor who starts out. It's about getting better and better equipment.
Do you want to go over that?
Sure, the process of editing?
The principles of editing.
Absolutely. So the principles of editing, as I see it, I'm your editing expert today. The principles of editing are the same as the principles of writing, acting, cinematography, lighting, which is the principles of storytelling. These are the overarching principles of what you're doing, because filmmaking is about telling a story, and all these disciplines are ways of telling that story, and then interacting with other ways to tell the story even more effectively. So, a lot of things that apply to like cinematography apply to editing, such as the principle of inclusion versus exclusion. In a frame that maybe you have your camera pointed down the street and your character's walking towards the camera on the sidewalk, what would you include in that shot? Well, the page says they're walking down the sidewalk. It's a quiet morning. There are maybe a couple cars that pass by, which further gives you the idea that it's a quiet morning. So you're not going to have him walk down a busy street. It's going to be a quiet street. It's morning time. So you're going to see the sun coming in at an angle. It's going to be a certain color, such as like the morning, the first hour of sunlight. It's golden hour. And that's a special type of sunlight that everyone recognizes. So you're like, either that's evening or that's early morning. So that's how your lighting would help tell the story. Mm-hmm. That's how you would capture it on camera. That's also what you look for when you edit. And then when you edit, part of your job is fixing or making adjustments. So maybe they didn't shoot it in the morning, but they shot it in the middle of the day. Mm-hmm. So you might apply a coloring tint to make it look like it's morning. Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't do that if they had shot it, right? But you do that just because, okay, well, the story says this is what happens, this is what I have, so here's as much as I can correct it and continue the storytelling process. Wherever you run into things that are impossible, I think that everyone should know up front what you can and can't do. But that's when the story starts to take a shift. And suddenly the movie that you wrote isn't the movie that you shot. The movie that you shot isn't the movie that you edit. And things start to change, and you start to make things work as best you can with what you have. But storytelling principles basically apply to all the filmmaking disciplines, no matter what it is, the grand principles. And, basically, as an editor, I'm also a writer. So basically, a writer has to have a beginning, middle, and end for their story, right? Mm-hmm. The very most basics to let people know that a story has parts, beginning, middle, and end. In reality, in storytelling, it's more like there's a 5-part structure to every story, mm-hmm. which is you have your characters. You always have characters. You have your protagonist, which is your most important, and you have an inciting incident. So you have the beginning of the story is establishing what is life for this character. Mm-hmm. Who is the character? What do they do? What point are they at in their life? And then the inciting incident upsets the balance in their world. So it changes something radically for their life. So this is the first major event of the story. Mm-hmm. So everything in the beginning, the credits rolling in, you got you're establishing your setting, you're telling story as an editor. You're basically on the page, you would say where the story takes place. This is the neighborhood or whatever. So you established a setting. So you need your shots for your setting. Then you have your character. You have your inciting incident scene. And then from there, you basically are building each scene in a similar way to where you establish a setting, you have your character, what happens in the scene, and then you cut to a new scene.
How does the movie change from production to editing? How would the nature of the movie change? Because I'm trying to understand, if you have the story already written out, if you have the scenes written out, mm-hmm. right, the lines written out, mm-hmm. how could the movie itself change from production to the post-production, the editing room?
Well, certain things that are not in your control could happen that prevent you from filming a scene that you wanted, or an actor became unavailable, or like I said, you had to shoot in the middle of the day instead of in the morning. So, and if you're not able to make up for these changes in the story, so instead of shooting it at the right time, you fix it in post. If you can't fix it in post, then you make it work within the story. You have to make it, basically, it's a plot hole, and you have to fill the plot hole.
Yeah, because I've been reading a book on George Lucas, mm-hmm. and in the first chapter of the book, normal biographies go about the person's life. It went over the worst day that he was having with the set of New Hope. The robots were broken. The car caught on fire with all their supplies. Mm-hmm. There was sand everywhere and getting inside the cameras. It was blistering hot and frigidly cold at night, and the actors were unhappy. He wasn't happy. Things just didn't go well, and the executives that were backing this movie were penny pinching everything, and I mean everything that could possibly go wrong that day went wrong. for that movie, which ended up being a great success in the end. But because to someone who watches the movie, you think, oh man, must have been wonderful. Must have been a wonderful time making the movie.
This is
so fun.
Star Wars, you said?
Yeah, New Hope.
Okay, and they shot in the desert a lot.
Yeah.
So it gets hot during the day. It's really cold at night. So you see why people love shooting in studios and green screens.
Yeah, I do.
Controlled environment.
Yes.
It's financially a very smart thing to do, where you can control. It's going to be the same thing every time. So those are ways that the things change, but the things that don't change is, like I was saying, like every story has inciting incidents in the beginning. You have a progressive complications where the story continues to ramp up for the character. You have a climax, and then you basically, or crisis and climax, and then you have a resolution. And then that concludes your story. So you tell a story, and you have to have all those parts. And the editor has to have all those parts. So we have to be aware of the importance of each scene so that we know that, okay, if we got to let a scene go, what scene doesn't need to be there.
Okay. So what's a recent movie you've seen?
Most recent movie I've seen it wasn't a great movie because I can't remember it basically, but I saw, what the fuck did I see? I started watching the House of Cards.
I heard that was really good. It's like a political movie.
It's a great it's a TV show. It's a Netflix TV show. It's a great series, and then the last series doesn't have the main character. It switched over to a different one.
Oh,
the last season, that's I started watching it last night, and it's like it's not as good as with Kevin Spacey. He plays the main character, and then his wife, played by Robin Wright, takes over in the end.
Oh, he had to. I guess he had to leave because of
It's a damn tragedy.
Yeah,
it's a goddamn American tragedy. Yeah, he had to leave the show, and he shouldn't have left the show. The show does not deserve him leaving it, but they made the story work. I think it was supposed to be his character. This is an example of the stories changing. So Kevin Spacey got accused of non-consensual sexual touching.
Okay.
And
very careful with this topic.
This is how we refer to it at my job.
Got it.
But so he had to leave the show,
Gotcha.
and they had to make the story work without it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that, actually, especially with TV shows.
I disagree.
No, here's why I'm okay with it. So what's the strength of TV shows is the fact that they're like movies, but they're longer. They have length. You have the ability to arc characters, change their natures, let them change over time and things like that, and explore.
But if they don't do it on a consistent basis, or if they don't share the attention with several main characters instead of having one, it could really destroy the show overall.
Well, that's not technically true in terms of storytelling.
Storytelling, right? Yeah, sorry, storytelling. Yes, sorry, I was thinking ratings. Yes,
I think you're thinking personal preference there, but
ratings. It show, if when the main character leaves, it can hurt the show. But
it can.
But regarding to storytelling, yes, it can happen. But it's just when it's so abrupt like that, you kind of want it.
Yeah, what's not ideal is when it's not planned. If it's not the design that the story should unfold that way, then it's not optimal to be forced to change your story on a whim like that. But in the right hands, it can be done very nicely, and it can be interesting. I like the idea of focusing on different characters, because what happened after Breaking Bad was over?
Oh, that was such a good show.
So good show, but they came out with Better Call Saul, right? Yeah, they have Better Call Saul. Have you seen that?
I haven't watched it.
It's damn good.
It is.
It is damn good. Yeah. If you like Breaking Bad, you'll like Better Call Saul.
I've been caught up in Game of Thrones and Walking Dead.
It's easy to get into. So TV has so much space for world creation. You can switch between characters and stay within the same universe. That's what makes it so interesting. I like the idea of changing characters. I like giving each character a full story. So I don't like seeing an abrupt end to a character and it's like, oh, we just killed him off, like a soap opera or something like that. But I like the idea of exploring as much of a good world as you have as you can.
I think. Well, what do you think the best show is? In my opinion, the show that does a really good job of that is Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. They do. So they somehow are able to build a character. You can fall in love with the character.
I missed the garbage can. I'll get it in a second. And
then they kill him.
Yeah, but the thing is, that was designed to be that way.
Yeah, but it worked out well. You know?
No, it was designed. It's not a matter of whether it's going to do good at ratings or anything like that. So in terms of storytelling, there is what's called single protagonist. Mm-hmm. So you have one protagonist. You can have plural protagonists, like in a buddy film or something like that. You have two protagonists. They basically have an equally important role in the story.
Power Rangers,
right? But then you can also have a multi-protagonist, like a mini-plot type, and it's not a buddy film, but you have different stories. So basically, the stories are not connected. Okay. They're basically connected in the grand sense of things. So, like, have you ever seen Crash?
No, I've heard of it, but I've never seen the movie.
So basically, a mini plot is one of those things where it's a lot of different characters, and they don't necessarily have anything to do with each other. But the whole point is to paint a portrait about society most of the time. And so movies like Crash, movies like Trafficking, movies like Rent, I think. I've never seen that, but I think Rent.
I've heard that it's a movie. I thought it was a movie.
So it's basically ensemble, right?
Yeah.
And there's just basically a distinction between the plural protagonists where the ensemble casts they know each other and they are basically function as one character, just broken up, versus multi-plot or multi-protagonist is like different characters with their own storylines that intersect sometimes at certain points. So I'm just saying there are various successes of each type of story, huge successes. I guess let's bring this back to editing so that we don't disappoint people on that front.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, you always have storytelling, but now the process of editing is also usually the same, no matter what you were doing, whether it's commercial, narrative film, documentary, or anything like that. So just basically the basic thing is, so for me, for Tampa Film Network, right? So the first thing is you collect all the footage you collect and label. Okay. Once you've collected and labeled, and you basically have, like, say, on your hard drive, a folder with all the footage. You have day one footage, day two, day three. You go into day one footage, you have camera A, camera B, camera C.
So do you do the clap as well for editing the footage, or do you? For indie films?
So you mean like with the slate?
Yeah, the slate.
Yeah. So the clap, so what that's for people who don't know, this is the thing where you put it in front of the camera and you say, this is Batman, scene 3, take 3, action. And then they clap the board and they walk out of the way, and then the director calls action. That's for when they need to sync video with sound. So to sync the video with the sound, the video, let's say the video has no sound. What you need to see then is the clapper open in front of the camera, and then you need to see it close. So when it makes that sound, you know, I'm going to freeze the frame right there when it made that, where the hands come together, and then I'm going to listen to the audio. And on the audio, you can't hear anything, but I'm going to hear, this is Batman, scene 3, take 4, clap. You stop it right there at the clap. You take that point where it clapped, you line it up on the video where the hands close, and now you've synced your audio with your video. That's the purpose of that. Now, in a lot of cases for indie films, they don't do audio and video separately. If you don't have to, you just basically line into the camera where your audio mic is going directly onto the video. And if you have that, then you don't need the slate. You don't need the clap.
Okay.
But so you collect and label footage, first part of editing. Second part, assembly and rough cut. Assembly is basically you figure out which shots you want to use. So what I do
Do you have an outline? Is that the outline you're reading off right now?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Can I borrow one?
Absolutely.
So you're going to go along with you?
Yeah.
So you're looking at this. I'm like, oh, okay.
So in the middle, you see.
Yeah, I see it. Okay.
All right. All that is the outline of the editing process. Okay.
Yeah,
and feel free to stop me and ask me about any of those.
So assembly. Oh, this is actually. I think a lot of people, including me, who. Okay, so you said the background editing skill. That's the first step. Wait,
yes.
Okay. Assembly and rough cut.
So, well, actually, that's the part. So that was when we were talking about our backgrounds with editing.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So assembly, rough cut. So the part that's not on there was just the collection and labeling.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought I was missing something. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So collection and labeling is important. But now let's say you already got the footage. Mm-hmm. It's all organized and everything. So now you actually open your editing program, right? A lot of us are using Adobe Premiere Pro.
Mm-hmm.
Professionals are using Adobe Premiere Pro. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Big time movie people are using Premiere Pro. It's grown to be so big now that it's bigger than it's ever been. Mm-hmm. A lot of people used to be into Final Cut. A lot of people still are. It's just not as used as it was used because Adobe's covered so much ground. Adobe can do a lot of things now just built into the program where it used to need various plugins and things like that. And Final Cut just made a lot of things easy. It still does that, but now Adobe's just caught up. The other thing about reason why people would use Adobe is you get every other program that kind of supplements it. So Premiere is their editing program, but then they've got After Effects.
Right.
So you can take the video from Premiere, put it in After Effects, start putting some special effects like those Star Wars lasers and things like that. There are After Effects geniuses out there. They've also got Adobe Audition, which is basically the auditing or the audio editing version of everything. So you can draw out the audio for a clip that you're editing in Premiere right into Adobe while the program's still open. Just like hot swapping or whatever. Make some changes, save it, and it goes right. The changes you made go right back into Premiere because they're working on the same base file. And so that's the strength of Adobe. They've created a suite of all these programs, and you're familiar with things like Photoshop, Lightroom. These are all Adobe products, and they're made to work with each other. They call it the cloud, Adobe Creative Cloud. So if you're not working with Adobe, you're probably working with Final Cut. If you're not working with Final Cut, another industry standard program that's been there for a long time is called Avid.
So you can say DaVinci.
Well, DaVinci too. DaVinci has been there for it's been known for color correction and grading. So it's a very good color correction and grading program. I've never actually had the chance to work with it though, because I didn't have a computer good enough at the time that I had a copy. Still have a copy. I guess I could try it out now. But anyways, so you have a program that you've picked, and you open up your project. Now, what's standard practice for a lot of editors is they've already got like a template project, that they just use on everything that has a lot of their settings that they like to keep. It has a lot of their panels in the place that they like. It has a lot of the folders and bins ready for whatever you're going to be doing. So I have a template just like everyone else, and it's just new project template, and it's got all my presets and everything. And then you just import all your footage. Now, the assembly process is the first actual thing with editing. That involves seeing all the footage you have and choosing the footage you're going to use. And the process is basically what I do is I watch everything from beginning to end. All the footage that was collected on day one, I watch every clip. As I'm watching, I say, I like this. I put a star next to that. I like this clip. I put a star next to that. Now, if you've labeled it properly, it's as simple as day one, camera A, 1 through 30. How many shots they did. Okay,
that makes more sense. I'll say it's a lot of film to go through.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know what one problem that people have because they don't do proper labeling is they just take the file right out of the camera and it's labeled X37555 MOV file. It's not easy on the eyes to distinguish that file from another file. So labeling, you have to label all these so that they're easy to distinguish. And the best thing you can do, all I do is rename all of them at the same time, and then in Windows, it'll put a number next to each one. So you're talking about shot, or day one, camera A shot 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's easy for us to reference. I can, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can just go into your folder and look at it if you're working with me on the project. So that's why labeling is important. But I watch every shot. I don't always watch them in order either. That might surprise a lot of people. So
yeah, if you don't watch it in order, how do you watch them?
I like to, because if I'm not watching it in order, so I'll have it in Windows Media Player or whatever, and it's just on random. So it's going through all these shots at random, right? And the reason I do that is I'm more interested in what I'm seeing than the story right now. I'm watching it to find the best cinematographic things that I can use so that I can just make it really good eye candy. And I don't want to get bored doing it either, so that's another reason. It's just more interesting for me at sometimes because so basically you can just watch it in order or not in order. If you're watching it in order, it's just easier to know that you've watched everything, because once you get to the end, you're at the end, versus if you're random, you're like, well, I went from 5 to 17 to 36. Did I actually get to 12? Did I actually see the 12? You might miss some things. So that's the thing about that.
So what is the rough cut then? What is that?
So basically, let's say you've watched all the footage and you've picked out your shots. Mm-hmm. Now you start to put them on the timeline. And this is called the rough cut, because everything is rough right now. The footage that you're working with hasn't been colored, it hasn't been worked with at all. You're basically just saying, I like what I saw in this shot that came right out of the camera. And you're just selecting what goes here, and then what comes next, and then what goes next. So you're selecting the ordering. Now comes the part where you actually cut, right? So you start to trim some of these footages. You cut off the ends, you split them, you start to make things work.
How do you know what to cut, what not to cut? Is it depending on the story and maybe the feel of the story, or are you just looking for specific areas where the raw footage won't work in the movie?
Well, one question you want to ask yourself while you're putting your clips on the timeline in assembly, once you're done with all the clips that you need, you ask yourself, could I tell the story if I didn't cut any of these? Like, does the story make any sense? If the answer is yes, then you're not missing any footage. If the answer is no, then there's a scene that's missing, there's something that's missing, and you can't get it from whatever you're about to do, because all you can do with footage is cut it down. You're not going to add anything to it, right? The only thing you'd be adding is if you duplicated the footage and played it back onto itself. I've done that. Don't blame me. It's just I had to make it work. But you're only going to be cutting stuff down once you get it. You're an editor. So you take everything that people just submitted to you unedited, and you start to shave it down.
Yeah, condense it.
So, and that's a little bit of power that editors have too, because sometimes we'll say, hey, look, the movie ain't going to make sense. I need you to go and film a missing scene or something like that.
Oh.
That changes the story from production to editing as well. When we find out that things aren't working the way that they thought, or that we need something else added to make sense, so we then have additional things that weren't in there in the beginning added on during the editing process and the post-production process.
So you've started the movie, right? You've assembled all the cuts together. You've asked your director to go back, maybe shoot a couple scenes, bring it back. What's up? You got a question?
Well, I was just gonna say, let me finish with the rough cut. You know what the last part of rough cut is? You know what's the best rough cut anyone could do? Let's say, how do I know I'm done with the rough cut part? Basically, your rough cut is going to be what the film is going to look like in the theaters, without coloring, without noise adjustment, without any other adjustments other than these are the scenes and these are where the scenes cut. Right? So I could basically finalize a rough cut, assuming that I apply color and everything else that comes after it, with a rough cut. A rough cut transforms into a final cut. Okay,
that makes sense. So basically what you're saying is once all the cuts are done, essentially your film is right there. I mean, you're missing some of the other things, maybe the transitions and the color grading and stuff like that, but essentially you have the base, the foundation of your film has been set, and that's when you know you're ready to move on.
That's right. If you had to just go right from rough cut to color to sound to titles to animation to let's just export this and be done with it, your rough cut is done if everything is if you can say yes, I'm done with my job and I can't cut anymore.
I like that.
So that would be your rough cut. Now, some people have different iterations of this. Some people they have a process called rough cut to picture lock to final. And picture lock is basically all it means is we're not going to change anything else on the timeline, the order, how long the cuts are, anything like that. The picture is locked. That's where that term comes from. But I like to just say the rough cut is done.
Can we pause for a second?
Sure. Hang on one second. All right. Hello. Can you hear me?
I'm ready to go.
Okay. Where were we?
Well, the last thing we talked about was basically when the rough cut, and you've assembled everything.
Right.
You basically should have the movie already created. It's kind of like taking. If you compare it to photography, you've already composed the shot. Maybe you shorten the bears down a little bit, but you've already composed the shot to how you wanted it. You've done all the legwork, and now you're ready to edit the rest of it.
Right. 1 second. Yes, you are correct. And some people, some people do their rough cuts a little differently. So it's like some people will do a little color correction in their rough cut. They'll do a little sound editing in their rough cut. And their rough cut will look pretty damn good. So with me, it just kind of depends on how you want to do it. With me, the stages are assembly, rough cut, and then you go with color correction, color grading, and then you've got your sound adjustments. I like to look at it as sound correction and then sound grading as well, kind of similar to the way that film is colored. And then you've got your titles.
I was about to ask you about that because I was like, if you have the film finally assembled and ready to go, I'd assume you have to do, if you didn't shoot with sound, I would assume you have to do the synchronization first. I was going to ask you about that before you actually go into everything else. Would you take care of the sound before that? I know it depends from person to person.
Yeah, so if you've needed to sync up your sound, you would do that pretty much before. So basically, there's two situations. So the first situation is, so you have separate sound, but then the camera also has its own scratch sound. So you can at least listen to the camera scratch sound and compare that with the good sound, and then you match that with the sound. A lot of programs do that automatically. They'll listen to the camera's scratch and then match it up with a good audio.
Premiere does that, if I'm correct.
Huh?
I think Premiere does that, if I'm correct.
Yeah, you can do it with Premiere. And you can do plugins too, but Premiere does it. But also, and that's native within Premiere with no plugins. Now also, though, there's a situation where your camera didn't record any sound. You just have the picture, and then you have to match that up with the audio. Now that's the situation where I was saying the physical slate itself
comes into play.
Is important because that's where you have it open and then closed. And then you match the closed to part where it actually gets to this part. You freeze the frame, and then you look at the wave file for the audio. There's a spike. The spike is going to be the part where you clapped. You take that spike, move it over, match it up with the picture, and then that's how you sync it. So you do that, and then you basically would start to cut. So this part would actually be before you color, before you do anything else. So basically after assembly, you know what clips you want to use. So you find the audio files that go with all those clips. Again, that's going to be organized before the assembly while you're labeling and organizing them. And
Nice. Okay.
And that's basically it. Assembly, rough cut, color correction.
So I got my movie right. I'm about to make millions and millions of dollars.
Well, I don't know about making millions and millions of dollars, but you have something that can be called a movie.
Well, exactly. But I have it ready to go, right? I've cut it. I've assembled it. It's all together. It's how I wanted it. Obviously, it's ready to be put in the big film, right? I don't need to do anything else.
Well, how good do you want your movie to be? Is the question.
I want it really good, man. I got executives down my back trying to make this movie sell. Or as an indie filmmaker, I'm trying to enter this into a competition to win. I'm in it to win it. I have my actors and everyone's worked hard. Is there something I'm missing?
Yeah. There's this thing called, there are some good editors in the area. Like I know a few off the top of my head. Like I know Dominic Smith is a good editor, local. Brandon Agan is a good editor. The guy who did Raised on Media, I believe he does his own editing too. He does, yeah. Jared Lee Sachs Miller. So basically, these guys, I feel like, are comparable to multi-million-dollar Hollywood editors. Like, I feel like they go to movies and they're like, I could have done this part better, that part better, this part. I've actually seen some of their work, and it's like, you could put it up beside any Hollywood stuff, and you basically can't tell the difference as far as who's more skilled.
But say if I'm making a movie, right, and everything's all put together.
Right.
How are they going to help me if I can do the cutting as by myself?
Well, here's the question. Here's the question.
Yeah.
So the question is, do you want to finish editing in 5 hours or 5 days?
5 hours.
Why 5 hours?
Shorter time.
Shorter time.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're prioritizing time.
Mm-hmm.
What if I told you if you did it in 5 days, it'd be a whole lot better? Would you believe me?
You are a good friend, trustworthy friend, so yes, I would.
You would believe me?
I would believe.
Does it make sense that the more time you spend on something, then it's going to turn out better?
I believe it, but I guess what I was trying to lead on to was what are they going to do with editing the film? Next thing would be going into color grading, color correction, some of the finite details. That's what I was trying to get you to lead into.
Who's they? Who are you talking about?
Oh, like for instance, the editor. If you're editor or someone who's editing the film. I'm saying can you turn it down a little bit? It's a little bit loud.
Yeah.
I'm saying, okay, yeah. I was saying, oh yeah, everything's put together, everything's cut. I'm good to go. I can put the movie out. I'm ready.
With the rough cut?
Yes.
So
that's what I was trying to say is like, hey, there's more steps. We got to do. There's color corrections, grading. If you really want to make your, say if you're doing like for instance, like Walking Dead, right?
I got
it's a show. They make it very grainy. I know you can actually see it when you're watching the show because it's very eerie time. There's zombies, people are dying. It's not a very happy situation. Mm-hmm. It's also, I think, I'm not sure if they lower the vibrance or the saturation, but the colors are a little faded. There's not a lot of contrast or rich color in that particular show. It's supposed to be gloomy, and that's the feeling they're trying to portray to you. So that's what I was trying to get. It's like, okay, yeah, man, no, you got to do this and that.
You look like Will Smith right now, dude. You got the energy of him too. All right, so are you asking? All right, why? I'm
trying to continue down the process. Let's go to color corrections. Okay. Go to the other stuff. All right. So as a novice like me, I'm interested. I don't know anything about color. I've seen it. I've seen the filmmakers babble about it on Reddit. I don't know what the importance of it is, honestly.
So let me explain to you why you don't just go with the rough cut. You need color correction. So once you know which clips you want to put together and you have your movie pretty much cut, you'll notice that when you go from one shot to the other, one is brighter than the other, one is darker than the other.
Yes.
You'll notice one sounds a little bit louder than the other, one sounds a little bit less loud than the other. So color correction is the next step, and what that basically entails is taking all the clips and making them look as similar as you possibly can. Mm-hmm. So if one is lighter than the other, that means it has more exposure than the other. You want to make the other one brighter or make the first one a little bit darker, but you want all your clips to be the same level of all your related clips, because these might be different scenes. You want them all to be as close as you can with how bright they are. You also want them to be pretty much the same depth of green. So if one clip has a certain amount of green and the other clip has a different, I won't say more saturation of green. I'll say, like, let's say somebody shot one part on a Canon and then they shot another part on a Sony. The two cameras have different color science. So the green on one looks a little bit different than the green on the other. So when the color correction comes into play, you may not get them right 100% in line with the other, with one green to another green, but you can get as close as possible. And that's the whole process of color correction, is you get them as close as you possibly can. The next step is grading. Grading is basically, let's assume that the color correction went perfect. So all these clips perfectly match, right? Now, depending on what you're making, if it's The Walking Dead, you apply a style. Now you start to go in a direction with your color. So if you want to start to go with a faded look, you start to fade certain colors. You start to let other colors linger. You start to add saturation to certain colors that require saturation.
But TJ, hold on. Are you saying if I take different shots of the same, of maybe different scenes that make up, the different scenes, how do I actually get them to be the same exposure and the same color? Do I have to go to each one and correct it? How does that work?
Okay, I feel like I know what you're doing there. So let's say
I'll give you an example. Gasparilla.
Well, I think this will cover that.
Yeah.
So let's say you got a bunch of clips.
Okay.
You got them as close. Let's say you got one that's perfect. All right.
Okay.
You know what color correction you want in this first one, right? In Premiere, you can actually copy the settings for that color. And if your other clips are pretty much shot at the same time, they're going to pretty much look the same. If it's on the same camera, same time, same conditions. So you can just apply it to all the clips, and they pretty much have the same thing.
Simple. Okay.
Yes. But
oh no, what's up?
There are situations where you can't get them to be exactly how you need them to be. So one clip just isn't matching, despite your best efforts, isn't matching the second clip. So basically, you start to do tricks. So you start to make sacrifices. So instead of having the perfect clip,
okay, you got me. I got excited, tricks, and then you said sacrifices. Now this is kind of hurting me. What type of sacrifice are you talking about?
All right, so think of that. Think of one of the scenes that you shot for Gasparilla, right?
Okay,
a perfect short little clip.
Okay, it's
edited. It's perfect. And then you got this other shot. You know, you're going to cut from here to here. They're related. It's still Gasparilla, but the second one isn't quite. It's noticeably standing out.
Right, it's darker or something like that.
Yeah, something went wrong at this point, right? But you need this clip. You can't drop it. You can't act like it wasn't there. It's just there. So sometimes as an editor, a decision you have to make is, all right, what am I going to give up?
Oh, no.
All right. So there's a principle that I've used with different groups called if you shoot on different cameras, what's your base camera? So, and this applies to editing too. If you have different clips, what's your base clip? So basically, if you have, let's say you have two different cameras, a Canon and a Sony, you say what's the superior camera? It's going to be the Sony when we think about the color. When we think about the this shoots in 4K and then the Canon shoots in full HD. So what do you do to make a match? You got a 4K, you got a full HD. The HD is inferior. You go with the inferior one as your base camera.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I would have said the opposite.
You would go with the 4K?
That's my original response. But I kind of thinking about it. If you were, if the base footage is higher quality than the footage of the different angle, then I'm assuming someone would catch on to that. You probably want the opposite, or you would cut that out.
Well, here's the question. So let's say you have two things that you like. You have 4K that you like, and you have the standard or full HD. All right. So you need to make these match. How can you make a match? Right.
You can make the 4K match the standard, but you can't make the standard match
exactly
the 4K.
Because 4K you can scale it down to the level of full HD or standard.
Right.
Standard can never become 4K.
Okay.
Because you have more information. This applies also to editing. What's your base clip or what's your base settings? Because if there's information missing, like say the clip that you want to use is clipping, meaning the highlights are blown out. Like say you have a full shot and you have clouds and stuff in the sky. The clouds had shadows in them and they had shapes and things like that.
Yeah.
But a blown out shot where it's too bright and overexposed, all white. So, and then next to that, you have a clip where the camera was really good and it captured all the shadows. It captured all the detail in the clouds. You love that shot. But now you have a whole bunch of these differing shots. So what do? You have the superior shot, you have the superior settings, and then you have the inferior shots with the inferior settings. So what do you do as an editor when your client or whatever for your project has to all match? You go with the inferior settings. You got to go with the inferior settings.
I don't like
so that. I take the blown out shots.
Isn't that painful though?
It's painful when you're sitting there with this beautiful shot and you're watching the detail just wash away as you push the little button further and further to just wash away all the detail of the clouds and stuff. And in the you're cranking up the saturation, cranking up the contrast is what normally what I would do.
So yeah, separate your emotions from the actual clip.
And you're making the clouds from one, match the clouds from the other, and you're making this camera's footage match this camera's footage. And you've lost detail because A, you didn't shoot with consistent equipment. B, you didn't plan for it, or else you would have shot with this consistent equipment. And C, now you have to make the movie consistent, because what are you going to do? Keep both? And then you have people sitting there going, why does it's obviously not matching. You know what I mean? This is not a finished product, you know? So you have to take that out, because one thing that editors do when we have to make decisions like that is, so we'll go with the inferior settings, and then we'll act like that's what we want to do in the beginning.
Act like.
Yeah. So this is another purpose that grading. This is another purpose that grading serves. So, like, sometimes when you want to make two clips match, you've done as best you can with color correction. Sometimes you got to throw on a style that's so heavy that it overshadows the fact that these two clips are different. You throw on a tint so dramatic that, you know, the differences in the shadows don't really stand out when you have such a stylistic tint or a stylistic
misdirection.
Cover.
It's having the eye gaze on something while ignoring.
Yeah, it's just a new coat of. It's a coat of paint, is what it is. Yeah, you paint it, and so people who, let's say you wanted to shoot on HD, you have HD camera, you just forgot to put it in HD mode. You shot the whole thing in standard definition. So all the shots that you thought would have all this detail and stuff, it didn't really capture all of it, and you got blown out clouds, you got shadows that are completely black, you don't have any detail. So what you do is you take one of those grainy filters, you put that on there, and you take a little old beige tint, you put that on there, make it look like an old film style. And old film styles didn't really capture detail the way that HD cameras do. And you make it look like that's what you want to do the whole time.
I guess I can work there in that time.
And this is kind of what happens in while you're editing, is things happen that are out of your control, and you still have to do your job. The editing principles are, you have to make sure all the clips that are related match, so that it doesn't take away from the storytelling, so that people aren't sitting there going, why is his face brighter now and then a second ago it was darker? Why is the light off in this shot and then the light's on in this shot? Where are there all these little inconsistencies and plot holes? You have to get rid of those plot holes. You got to get rid of the inconsistencies. You have to make everything match, so that the only thing that stands out are the characters and what's happening in the story.
Okay.
There's another principle called symmetry. So basically, anything that's not symmetrical in nature is directional. So if you have a table and you have a vase, if you don't want people to pay attention to the table or the vase, you put the vase in the center. Right? But if you want people to think that there's meaning there, you put the vase on either side.
You know, that it's funny you say that, because that actually applies to it's a little off top of headshot photography. I did a course on it, and the professional was explaining,
never put her in the middle.
Yes, unless he said very, very rarely. Some people have symmetrical faces. The other half of their face is the same as their the other side. And in some cases you can, but majority of the time you want to angle them. Usually I angle them on both sides to see which side's the better side, because everyone has a good side to their face. But when I heard that, I was like blown away, because
blown away too. I don't have a good side. I'm all good, baby. I'm all good. Both sides.
You're symmetrical?
I'm symmetrical. I'm perfect.
Oh gosh,
I'm flawless.
Oh, okay. Eagles will be at our next podcast. but I agree. I agree with the symmetry is very, very. I think it's very appeasing to the eye. And I personally, when I shoot pictures or when I'm doing video, I like to use symmetry any way possible, because I love it. For me personally, not from it's a personal note, not from a
I got
like professional editing note. But,
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a time and place for everything. There's a time and place for symmetry, and then to go directional. But basically, in storytelling and in a lot of things, just like you're saying, there's this line where at one extreme you have symmetry, everything is the same, and then the other end you have chaos. But then there's a part where you keep symmetry on some things, and then you purposely put some things off center to draw more attention to those. That applies to storytelling because you have a setting where there's symmetry, where there's everything you expect to see, and then your character is what stands out. It happens in editing where, maybe you have a full shot of like an establishing shot or whatever, but sometimes there's a little too much going on in the establishing shot. Like they didn't think it out. Like there's too many stop signs, there's too many street signs in an establishing shot. It's noisy is what we call it. It's just too much information coming out the brain. So we punch in editing so that we exclude some of these distracting things about the shot. And then our establishing shot is smaller focused, but it's still an establishing shot. We needed more symmetry. We needed less noise.
So the film is assembled. It's edited. I've got it color graded, or got an editor color graded. But the sound's a little off here and there. What do I do then? I mean, sound. I mean, it's not like you can, you can edit visuals. I can see how you do that, but how do you edit sound? Like, how do you edit sounds where it's consistent throughout across the board? Because wouldn't you have to measure that like through I don't know what's called, but I think the wavelengths, if I'm correct. How would you even go about doing that? It seems something so complicated and
Well, first of all, you're correct. With sound, we work with wavelengths, but this is also important. Like for editing, I mentioned before that you basically make sure everyone knows what you can and can't do up front. This applies to every part of editing. So assembly, how good are you with that? Coloring, how good are you with that? Sound, how good are you with that? Now, if you are really good at coloring and you suck at sound, and you're the only editor, all your great work that you just did is going to sound really shitty, right? So how do you make your sound good? Now, if you have the skills, you can make it sound better. You're not going to make it sound good if it doesn't sound good in the beginning, already. Right?
So it's one of those permanent things where...
Well, that part was the sound recordist responsibility to make sure that they don't have clipping going on where the sound is too loud, and to make sure that they don't have the volume too low where they're recording. So they make sure that you have what you need in a respectable file. They give you the best quality possible, which is going to be a WAV file. It's going to be huge, but it's better than an MP3 file. So when you need to work on these files, a WAV gives you a lot more information and detail to work with. Now, if you're looking at a WAV file, I like to think of sound editing similar to how I think of as the process of coloring. So I would try to correct the sound as much as possible. I probably would have tried to make sure that the sound is going to at least be decent before I actually even got to the coloring.
Right, you want to fill it in and take care of that in production as possible, so you don't have to deal with it.
Well, no, remember that the assembly process where you choose your clips.
Yes,
you're also choosing your audio files too, right?
Oh,
so if you have clips and not good audio, your problem is going to be either you're going to have a silent film, or somebody's going to have to go and record some audio. Or you got a Foley artist on your team where you didn't get the sound of the footsteps walking, but now you have somebody who's specialized in recording footsteps.
It's funny you say that. The movie Wolverine, the last one.
Didn't see that one, but
I didn't see it either. But there was a video on I think Instagram or Facebook, and I saw how he did the scene. He was running through the forest, stabbing people. And I thought they would record that in real time, but what I realized is he was actually in a studio. He was watching the scene, acting in the scene, making the noises. Yeah. You
zoom out, he's like in front of the green screen.
Yeah. No, he wasn't in front of the green screen. What happened was he was actually running through the forest. That was actually happening.
Were they on location or this was in the studio?
I think they were on location. So the movie on location, but the sound he recorded in the studio.
Okay, so I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, he was watching. So imagine just like this, earphones, microphones. Since he's watching a movie in front, and he's acting in the scene. He's making the noise on point with the scene as it's happening.
Yeah,
and I thought that was so interesting. I thought it was happening in the movie, but that's beautiful thing.
But that's the point of it.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. So when it comes to adjustments like that, that's where you had to add what wasn't provided for you, such as music. They're not recording music while they're shooting the film, right? You add that later, and you do that because it sounds better because you have more control
rather than doing it in the moment and trying to.
Production is chaotic. Production is chaotic. You're dealing with weather. You're dealing with actors. You're dealing with equipment. You're dealing with all kinds of things that can go wrong. You're dealing with time. You're dealing with temperature. You're dealing with so many things that this is kind of has to be a part of your skill set. If you're an editor, is just you need to be able to fix audio issues if they had them. So what I was saying is there's only so much you can do. You can't fix everything in post, but you can perfect as much as possible in post. So your base has to be really good, and that's during the assembly process where you figure out that you have all the clips you need, you have all the audio you need, and all the clips are close enough with exposure and sound and everything that you're not going to need to go and get anything else.
Okay. All right. So
but you may need to get something else.
Possibly.
You know what types of things you might need to get?
Oh, you might need to create sounds, don't you, for the movie?
Hopefully you don't need to create sounds. That takes longer. Hopefully you may just need music. You may just need to just grab a sound of a door closing online because there are a lot of websites that offer sound effects and things like that.
Sounds fun.
Or you might need stock footage. So if you didn't get an establishing shot, you can just buy an establishing shot. If it's just like a ordinary location, you just need the aerial shot just to kind of give you a general idea of what community or whatever you're dealing with. You might just go online and get that. You get the rights to it. It's the audience is going to tell the difference if you've done it right. If you've done it wrong is when they can point it out. It's like, oh well, that's different. The whole point of all of this is to make sure that none of it gets in the way of the storytelling. So they can't tell anything about the filmmaking process going right or wrong. But yeah. So with audio correction, the way I do it is I correct all the audio and get them as close as I possibly can. The clips that don't match, I then have to go with a base setting. So if I had the air conditioning on, for example, in one shot, and I clearly don't have it off in the other shots, guess what I got to do? I go with the inferior setting, the one with the air conditioning that sounds like shit. Now I've got to isolate that sound, put it over all the other clips so that it matches. Yeah. Jeez. Because if your only other option is to take out the one that has the air conditioning, which it might not be possible, or there is no other option. With audio, you have limited options.
Okay. So audio is the best thing to do is get it right the first time if you possibly can, or record it. Maybe the best thing is to record it in a controlled environment where it can be where there's less factors that can happen to interrupt it, or in this case, you have to choose the inferior audio to make it more consistent across the board. Okay, so then I want to kind of wrap up and kind of go to the next couple things, if that's fine with you.
Yeah. What do you like to know?
So the transition from actor to writer, what do you mean by that?
Let me see. Oh, shit, I don't know.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's a typo. I think that was supposed to be down there, and I started typing this in front of that.
Okay, gotcha.
So your transitions is one thing. So going from one shot to another, do you just cut? Do you dissolve? Do you white out? Do you black out? Do you those are things.
Dissolve every clip.
Get dissolve. I don't dissolve. I like to cut, but cuts is it's the least noticeable thing.
Yes, I agree.
And then your titles. So your titles are important. I think your titles are really important.
You talking about in the beginning?
Well, the titles can be in the beginning. They can be as the opening shots are rolling through. They apply to the end, obviously, because you have your credits. But anywhere where there's text, that's your titles. So you have to
I
decide.
remember a movie where.
Well, think of any movie, like where the movie's coming on. You know how you see the words at the bottom.
Yeah, I remember Star Wars. Star Wars is most vivid in my mind because of that long couple of paragraphs you read before the movie starts.
Yeah, but any text. So, like, what's the last TV show you've seen? Dramatic TV show.
Oh, dramatic. It would probably have to be. It would be Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead. So as The Walking Dead's coming on, you're seeing the actors' names pop up. Even in the opening things, those are titles.
Yes. Okay, now I know what you mean. Yes.
Those are titles. Mm-hmm. Now, and you have to decide, like, do they cut in? Do they dissolve in?
What they do is I think they dissolve in and out, if I'm correct.
Yes, but the same thing with color, with everything else. You got to decide for your movie what's the best way for those titles to come in. They've got to be present a lot of times, because if you're doing work with stars or actors, they've got to have their name come in. But basically, you decide what the animation is going to be, how they come in, but also it serves a purpose, because I like titles. I like title sequences that kind of get you in the mood for what the tone of the movie is going to be. Mm-hmm. So, like, for example, "Girl with the Dragon Tattoo" is one that I really love. Yeah. In the beginning of that, it's like, you know a good movie is on when in the first 5 minutes you're in good hands. Like it's working. Everything they did in the movie is working on you, right? Mm-hmm. Like the tone of the lighting, the tone of the soundtrack coming in, the way that the names come across, and it's like it's just giving you the mood. It's giving you where you're going to start out. I like to use titles to help with establishing the mood that you're going to be working with. That makes sense. Yeah, and then at the end, if you want to do something fun, it doesn't have to just be words going up and down the screen. It can be like sound designed by.
It's a little bit too intense for me.
Depends on your movie.
I'm more of a calm, relaxing kind of come in.
Oh, you're one of those boring white words, top to bottom.
Yes.
Well, that's easy to do.
All right, and this last thing you have here,
Final Cut.
I've heard the encoding.
Encoding. Yeah.
I've seen it because I go on Reddit a lot and I look up advice because they talk about some good interesting things on there regarding filmmaking. But I saw that encoding, and so what is encoding? How does that have to deal with the film?
Right. So you throw all your titles on there. Everyone gets credited, right? Mm-hmm. Your movie is pretty much.
Oh, that's
done.
the ending. That's the last part where all the.
I'd say your titles are the last thing, but some people have the last step called Final Cut. Mm-hmm. I include that with the assembly, the rough cut, and the final cut because it's all cutting. But sometimes people make last minute changes. Like there's a director's cut for a reason, and there's like a shorter cut. So that you can have different lengths of the movie depending on where you need to show it. But the last step is going to be your encoding. And what this involves is just selecting the type of file you want to render. So what's the format? Is it going to be, and that depends on where it's going to go. Are you going to be showing it on YouTube? Probably going to be rendering it MP4.
Well, for most, so I was going to say, for most indie filmmakers, it's most likely going to be shown at festivals, and social media will be the two big things I'm thinking of, unless you have something else. Vimeo would be another thing as well.
And you know what? Adobe has different presets for where you want it. So if they say, if you want to take it to YouTube, press YouTube, and it'll put all the presets in for you. Yeah. If you need to put on Vimeo, select that, it'll put all the presets in for you.
Okay, it's kind of dry, pretty simple.
Yeah, but encoding is two things. So basically you're selecting what the codec is, and like most people use H.264. That's a popular one. It's just a method of writing the data down and then choosing a wrapper. Something to a file type, right? So H.264 is a codec. MP4 would be like the wrapper. So it's an MP4 file, and the coding is H.264 architecture, if you will. MP4 can also serve as its own codec too, but then you've got other things like you've got MOV.
What is MOV, by the way?
That's Apple's. That's movie file.
Apple?
Yeah, Apple.
I figured. I was editing some videos at MOV, and I was like, "What is this?" Because I had to get it.
You've got AVI.
Transferred.
You've got XVID. You've got Divid, Again, a bunch of different ones online where you know how these video streaming sites sometimes they require you to have a certain toolbar that renders their movies and a certain thing, and the purpose of it is to get as much quality into as small as video file as possible. This is kind of the purpose of the codecs, to take huge amounts of information and render it down into a small file. So when you play it, it explodes again, right?
Oh,
so it takes up less space.
I was wondering about that because when you actually, because the video files, especially when they're done, it's huge. That's a huge file to not only to manage, but to also to send. If you're trying to send it to someone, you know, it could be a couple of gigabytes sometimes.
And you know what dictates the size of that file?
What?
Encoding.
Huh.
Encoding. That's going to tell you a bigger file is going to have more information, just like a sound wave file is going to give you more info than an MP3. So at the cost of file size, you can have something that's easier to work with, more portable, but something bigger would be something that you want to give to like a big client. Like a big client needs a big lossless file size because the more you condense things down, the more quality you lose.
Oh, I understand, because that's why people say, especially when you're uploading videos online or specifically on social media, they compress it a lot. So sometimes I think the quality can be lost a little bit from it, based on what I've seen. Some of my videos too that I posted, quality can get lost. But I get that, because if you're working for a big commercial client, you probably want to give them the largest footage. They'll probably edit it and send it out whatever way they would like to.
Yeah,
okay,
if they know what they're doing.
Some do. Actually, a great example I can think of was the 1984 Apple commercial, the one where she throws the jackhammer at the screen, and then that's when Apple had the rainbow Apple logo. And they actually used a real set.
The rainbow apple.
Yeah, they actually used a real set for that.
Was that the beginning of Think Different?
Yeah, I think so.
It's like an Orwellian scene, and she's like running to.
It was actually a real set. I found out when I was looking at the background of it. No green screen, no nothing. It was all real. All of it.
She actually threw the thing. Well, you know what, man? That's kind of the, when you're starting out, a lot of things is real. You think things have to be done exactly the way they appear because you've been watching movies and you've been trained to see that everything that you're seeing is real. Wow, and then you find out that, oh, no, Wolverine wasn't running through the forest. We had somebody with the grass or whatever shaking it next to the microphone. And it's like, It's all, movie magic,
So you're saying the dinosaurs from Jurassic World weren't real? You're saying they didn't bring real dinosaurs out?
Bro, what I'm saying is when you look into it... if anyone gets that reference, when you look into it, no, dinosaurs are they're not real.
Oh, they're not.
They're not living real.
This is news to me.
This is called movie magic.
I must have missed this in high school.
And the Navi in Avatar weren't real either.
They weren't real either?
No.
Oh my god.
Unfortunately.
Wow.
No.
I'm learning so much today.
This is what I need you to tell all your friends. I'm going to pay you a supporting fee.
Okay.
What's the most? You've edited before. What's the most frustrating part that you've ever, or most frustrating thing you've had to deal with editing?
When I did try it, I tried trying to synchronize footage to music.
Okay, that can be very frustrating. For me, since I've been trying to do it in the early days, it's just basically the equipment that I had was never optimal. I didn't understand what's best for editing and stuff like that. One thing that you have to worry about is hard drive.
Oh, space, yeah.
Not space.
Oh.
Do you see this?
Yes.
And you see this? These are both hard drives.
Okay.
But do you know the difference?
Is it the plug? I'm confused.
So one is bigger than the other, yes. So this is called a hard disk drive. Feel it.
Oh, it's heavy.
It goes. It's an external hard drive. It goes. You plug it into your USB. Now, do you have one of those?
I have one, but it's not. It's more. It's in between the sides of these two. But I do have one.
Okay. So basically, one thing you'll notice with that is when you plug it in, you start to feel it. Right? It moves a little bit. Right?
Yeah, it does.
So that's called a hard disk drive. There's an actual disk inside of it that's spinning, right?
Yeah.
And there's a thing that's that's reading the information off of the disk, right? This here is also a hard drive.
Oh, it's a lot lighter.
It's a lot lighter. That's called a solid state drive.
SSD, yeah.
When you plug that in, there's no moving parts. So a hard disk drive versus a solid state drive for editing is very important because the solid state drive is a lot faster than the hard disk drive.
Oh, I've heard of that before.
Right. So you have advantages and disadvantages with both. With the hard disk drive, you have a lot more space. So this is like a 4 terabyte thing right here, right? 2 terabyte or whatever. So you get more space at a lower price. With a solid state drive, you get less space at a higher price. That's 120 gigabytes. This is 2 terabytes.
Why would you buy this then if it's a lot more of less space?
Because it's faster.
So would it be a smart choice to edit on this?
Think about this. You know how when you put things on your timeline, sometimes it's choppy because you need to render it?
You mean choppy? You mean like the video's lagging, the preview?
Like if you just put it right there on your timeline and you try to play it right then, sometimes the video is choppy.
When you mean, I'll make sure we're defining choppy the same way. You talking about where it lags and it kind of goes. Okay, yeah.
So it's playing, but it's lagging because there's too much information or whatever. So when you render it, though, it basically creates video files that it recognizes easily, so it can play it in its place at the same time, so it's nice and smooth. Now, if you've ever had to watch something render, it can take a long time. If you're doing it on a hard disk drive, if you're saving your information to a hard disk drive, it's going to take a lot longer than it does on a solid state. Solid state has less space, but when you're looking at rendering time, much faster.
So if you say, would it be better to edit on a solid state drive and maybe use a external drive more for storage?
Well, that can be a little bit of a complicated question. When I edit, I generally, wherever my footage is stored is where I'm editing the files from. So usually it's from a hard disk drive, okay? But if I want to go faster, solid state. Now, solid state is limited with space, but if you limit that to just one project, it can all fit on there. And you can do one project at a time on a solid state drive. Yeah. So if I had one project, I would put it on the solid state drive, edit completely from the solid state drive. So whenever I render, all the files save directly to that. And anyone who has a solid state drive computer knows, like, when you turn on Windows on a hard disk drive, it takes a few seconds to turn on. When you turn on a solid state drive, it's like that. It's on.
Wow.
It's ready to go. So that's one thing. And that's... for anyone who's thinking about getting into editing, when you're looking at a computer, if you can get a solid state drive, that's going to be better for you. And then get a hard disk drive if it's cheaper and that's what you can afford. But a solid state drive is a better choice. And also for people who are just wondering about what specs and stuff you should be looking for, a laptop is better than a desktop in terms of you being able to edit wherever you are. A desktop is generally going to give you more power, just less mobility, so you'll be editing from home. So make your own decision on that. What's important is the computer chip, so basically the processor. I recommend Windows.
Really? Oh,
I do.
First.
I'm working on a Windows computer right here. Mac, I love you guys, but they sell shit at a way too expensive. And when you compare the performance, it's you're getting less for way cost at a way.
Are you speaking against the iCult?
I'm speaking against the iCult.
How dare you?
I don't care.
We're coming for you.
There are more of us than you. But that's not their thing. Their thing is beautiful design and user friendliness. So it's okay. And all their shit is actually designed to kind of they can use lower level spec stuff because it's all designed to work with itself. It works a little differently from Mac, but Windows is going to be cheaper. You can get a editing powerful laptop for under $200.
Really?
It's not going to be brand new. Every computer that I edit on, I've always bought on eBay for less than $200.
Really?
Yes.
You want to tell me that? I'm curious.
Yes, absolutely. For under $200, if you need to edit even anything, 4K footage, you're covered. So get yourself a Windows laptop, right?
Okay. I'm writing this down. If you're watching this and you're hearing this, you better write this down.
So first things first, hard disk drive. Hard drive. What are you going to get? Hard disk drive or SSD?
I would only use this laptop for editing videos, and I'll just keep this laptop. I would
go SSD then.
SSD, yeah.
SSD. This here costs $25.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's only 128 gigs, but if you were to get 240, it's enough for at least a project. So that would be like 49, right?
49. How many gigs would you say? How many gigs would you need?
I would get no lower than 120 for the hard disk drive.
So 120
for SSD, no lower than 120. So if you can get more, spend more and get more. But don't go any lower than 120 for SSD. Get SSD over hard disk drive.
Okay.
Your computer chip is very important. Your processor. So for Windows, they have them in I's and they're odd numbers.
Right.
i3, i5, i7. The current one is i7, I believe, unless they came out with an i9 or overnight or whatever. But i7 is the current one. Get the highest number you can get. So
why?
Because it's going to be faster and more efficient. Don't go any lower than i5. You can edit anything comfortably with an i5 or better. So i5 or i7 for the processor. Now, here's the other complication with that. There are generations of each. So a fifth generation i5 is better than a second generation i5. A eighth generation i7 is better than a fourth generation i7. So
you want the older generation.
Get the higher number of either. Get the higher number of i5 or i7, the highest one you can get. But even if you had a first generation i5, it's good enough. It works.
Okay.
So other than that, RAM. That's a big one. All right. So RAM. Don't go any lower than 6 gigs of RAM. No lower than 6.
What do you think about the 6? I've seen some people say 16 and 8.
No. Don't go any lower than 6.
I know. I've seen some people suggest you do 16 or 8.
Well, hell, if you can splurge and get yourself 16, go ahead and get yourself 16. But the issue is some laptops will only support up to 8 or something like that. So don't go any lower than 6, but get as many gigs as you can get because that's only better for you.
Got it.
And your computer. And other than that, I can't think of anything else.
What about the screen resolution? I heard that's important depending on what.
I can't really help you with screen resolution. I've never been a good. I understand color. I've never had the best equipment to do color correction or color grading. I've done it to the best of my monitor's abilities, but my monitors are not calibrated to the same specs as like a really, really professional project. So
basically, you're saying is he's so good at identifying color that even though the screens might not be up to par, he's able to find out the right color for his film project.
I can get a lot done with a little money. Because I only have a little money, so I have to be good. But yeah, so if you can get the better, so it depends on. So this is what would take you out of the $200 range. Okay. If you're spending $200 or less, you're not going to be doing the best color correction that you can do. Okay. So that's where you would spend $500-$600 because you're going to get a better resolution on your screen monitor, and you can know that the color that you're looking at is the color that is basically consistent with whatever YouTube is going to show or whatever.
I would say if someone was doing probably commercial projects, then that's definitely something they would need. But maybe someone who's just an indie filmmaker.
Oh no! If you're a beginner or an indie filmmaker,
yeah, you don't. I don't think you need.
Don't worry about that shit because what you can do is you can buy a separate monitor, and you kind of can compare between the two. You can watch it on somebody else's thing. The thing that you got to take into account is your work is probably going to be viewed online, and not everybody has the most up to date screen.
That's true.
Anyways, so $200 or less, get yourself a laptop. Desktops are cheaper and you get more power for less money, so it's less mobile, so that's the only thing. So all those specs apply to desktop as well. Desktops are better because you can swap out the hard drives easier and add or take away
more
RAM.
Customizable.
More customizable, yeah. But get a laptop if you can.
Okay. All right. Is there any final remarks? I know I thought we had something special happening next weekend. I think we mentioned it earlier. escaped my mind.
We were trying to do more than just the acting class, but the acting class is next Saturday from 3 to 5:30, John Germany Public Library, downtown Tampa. Saturday, I'll be teaching, and we don't have anything Sunday because it's going to be Veterans Day.
Oh.
And it's Monday, but they close it on Sunday. The library's usually open, but they close it on Sunday. So not good because we can't get other stuff done. Tampa Film Network. So we like to get the acting class, and then also the editing, and then the writer stuff and all that stuff. So the week after, we'll be picking up some more stuff like the editing and the writing stuff. But acting is next week. If you are interested in acting, come to class, go online and on tampafilmnetwork.org and fill out the thing, and you'll get email notifications anytime we have classes. They're always free. Also, if you want to be on Tampa Film Network's editing team, we basically have our own. We do our own projects, and we have our own editing team, and you learn a lot just by doing the projects and stuff. There's no pay. It's all completely narrative, creative, collaborative. That's your fulfillment and satisfaction that you get from it. But it's good experience. You get credited IMDb. You learn how to work with an editing team. You don't have to depend too much. We don't have to depend too much on any one individual. We break up the work. But if you're interested in editing, reach out to us. Our email is tampafilmnetworks with an S at the end at gmail.com, or just go to tampafilmnetwork.org, go to the contact page, and you can send a message through there, or go on Facebook and send a message directly to Tampa Film Network fan page or to the group. Or to me. I'm one of the admins. And you got Kamari here also. Well, he's the podcast team, so. But that's all for the stuff that's coming up. And we're still working on Good Friends. It would be nice to talk about Good Friends, but we didn't have time. Any questions, just send us a message or something.
When you finish, we can actually do a whole podcast breaking down.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, we can interview the actors, and we can actually go through a whole podcast on that, yeah.
What I wanted to do was put on a screen to show you, while we're talking about editing, like what point we're at with the editing, and just kind of show you, hey, this is how this applies to color correction and stuff like this. Here's what we did with the audio. And, we would need another podcast to show you that.
Well,
but
actually, I know you recorded a couple of videos for that, so I think for YouTube, if I'm correct.
Oh, the editing process?
Yeah, for Good Friends.
Yeah, actually. How'd you know about that? You saw them?
Yeah.
It was basically the edit. You see the editing, and it's me in the corner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I pay attention.
As a test, though, I did it as a test.
I saw it.
I think anybody would actually tune in, but you did. Well.
Put it out there. I mean, what do you expect's going to happen?
So anyone who's interested in editing too, I guess that clip is actually still up. You can actually go on there and see.
Well, it's interesting.
You can watch, and I comment. I like to just talk as if I have somebody to talk to. But I'm editing the short film that we did, Short Good Friends, and I'm commenting on the process as we go through. Like, this is why I'm doing this. This is why this is important. Oh, I hate when I get files, and this is what's happening. So it kind of gives you kind of experience of what it's going to be like. But also, last thing, so anyone who is serious about doing the editing, there's an editing team, but to get on that team, you have to take the seminar. Don't think it's like a charge thing. Like I said, everything that we do is free, but it's an introductory class or hour or two that kind of breaks down how the team works in the process of editing, lets you know what you're going to need as far as equipment. If you already have equipment, we help you get programs and stuff installed. We have free editing programs. Not for everyone. Don't tell anyone else I said that. But we have free editing programs that you can use. I'm not saying which ones, but we do. So you can get your hands on some editing stuff too, and we show you how to use it. Learn by doing. That's what I say.
All right.
Any other questions you have for me or anyone else before we go?
I think I'm good to go. Right, I'm excited for next weekend. All
right, take us home, man. Tell them where they can follow Tampa Film Network's various social media.
Oh, there's a lot. Well, first probably is on Facebook. The most common one. Give me 1 second.
Oh, Jesus.
There's 3 I'm a part of. There's 3. Give me a second. I want to make sure I got the right name. God.
There's not that many.
Oh, there's 3 I'm a part of. That's why I'm saying.
Okay. Well, on Instagram, it's at Tampa Film Network, or if you just type in the search bar Tampa Film Network, there you find us on there. We're on Twitter. We're on Twitter. Tampa Film Network. We're on there at Tampa Film Network.
And the one that I mostly know, and probably a lot of people know, is Facebook, which is simply Tampa Film Network.
Yes, there is a page and there is a group. They're not the same.
They're not the same. They're not the same.
So you can follow the page and join the group. And then the last thing is YouTube. Type in Tampa Film Network, get our channel, subscribe, follow, like, and comment and subscribe on all of these channels. And tell us what you think. Tell us what you would like us to do a podcast on next. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast to talk about a certain thing, if you do camera work or if you do directing, lighting, anything, if you actor, anything, let us know if you want to come on. We can talk about, issues that face you or anything that you do involving local filmmaking. That's what we do here. Or just tell us any subjects that you'd like us to explore or get into depth on, and we'll make it happen.
Awesome.
That's all I got.
All right.
We'll go over news in the film industry next time too. Probably do a movie. We could do a movie review.
We can. We can actually. That's actually be a really good idea. We can actually play the movie, write down different scenes. Yeah.
We can't play the movie, but we'll get to take it off the line. But we could take a certain scene.
Yeah, take a certain scene. Certain scenes.
We can't just play the whole movie from beginning.
Yeah, no, I got you. That's what
that
I mean.
would
Take
be
certain
fun
scenes.
though. We just comment and just trash the fucking. This piece of shit. This is bullshit. They can't act for nothing.
Well, if we're gonna be doing that, I don't want to do. Then we're not doing Gladiator because I love that movie.
I like Gladiator too. I like 300. We like a lot of the same movies.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, we do.
Kind of get my feelings hurt.
I don't know a single movie that you don't like that I like, or that I like that you dislike.
There might be some artsy movies I might.
Did you ever watch It Follows?
No, I did not.
Did you watch?
Because I remember when we left, I was thinking, "Holy crap!" I completely forgot what the. Because I remember it was like the following. I kept typing the following. It's like, no, that's not it. There was a car there, and I kept trying to find it. Okay, do you want to do that?
I've already seen it, but yeah, we can do it.
I'll watch it this week.
It's a real that would be a real horror movie. You know what I mean? When I say real horror, I'm not talking about those cheap surprise jump scares where they just slam their hand on it.
He takes horror very seriously.
I take film very seriously. But what I'm saying is true horror is not about cheap surprise where they slam the door really loud when you least expect it to make you jump out of your seat. It's about horrific concepts and ideas. It's about scary things that you can think about and apply to your life. That is not necessarily the boogeyman jumping out of the dark, but just the fact that there is a boogeyman in the beginning. And why the fuck is he in the closet or under the bed? Why does he choose that place? Why?
I have trouble sleeping, so I sleep in the closet. It helps me rest.
Well, you're gonna make people scared of Batman.
Because Batman saves people.
Batman saves people. That's true. Because he couldn't save his parents.
Oh.
Also, another thing we could talk about one day.
Wow, cold.
No, I wasn't throwing shade at Batman.
6-year-old boy.
Can't
do anything.
He's my favorite superhero, who's not a real superhero with superpowers. He just has a super genius brain and a lot of money.
And he's one of the characters where his alternate identity is his alternate identity.
His real identity is what you're saying.
No, it's real. Yeah, his real identity is his alternate identity.
Not true. There's Superman too. Clark Kent is his fake identity, and then Superman is who he really is. When he wears the Superman outfit, that's what they wore on Krypton.
I kick us out.
All right, so now they know where we do our podcast from. All right, so thanks so much for tuning in. I'm TJ.
Kamari Ross.
Out.
We're out.